many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. Some of the topics we're going to get in today, we're going to get into homeschooling a little bit. I got an article or two on that. And one of the first things I kind of want to get into is foreign affairs, Russia, and basically everything going on right now. But there's one thing that's been brought up that I think is pretty easily seen, I think, in what is going on. But I kind of disagree that this is even something that would be plausible in the circumstances that we're in right now. Where I think we're going is, I've said it before, I think we're in a World War III. We just, for the most part, don't realize it yet. I don't think we realize we're in a World War III. And I think everything changes when we start seeing we are in a world war. But there was something interesting. I think there's something to say about the facts that AMTV put out one, and there's definitely something interesting about it, but I just don't see it plausible. And he basically is saying that Obama wants regime change in Russia. And I think that's true. But I think this is what leads to I don't think that you're going to get Putin or any type of regime change to be successful in Russia. You look at the situation, and I think they would feel vulnerable without Putin. Because by us putting sanctions on Russia, if we look at history, it doesn't play into our hands as the theory would suggest, well, if we put sanctions on them, even if it's not directly hurting the pockets and the lifestyle that Putin would get to live, if it negatively affects the populace, then they'll turn on them. Well, that's not always true, because if you look at the history of other countries that we put sanctions on, like North Korea, it doesn't help. It doesn't do anything. If we look at, how it usually goes down, it turns out to put the populace more in a servitude state, where just to feed themselves, they have to beg at the feet of the elite. Then you look here in our own country, we don't even practice it that way. They try to give you all kinds of distractions for their servitude. But I want to play this clip here from AMTV, and I'll let you make your own conclusion from this.
Putin!
Dear friends, first and foremost, I would like to thank all the citizens of Russia who participated in the election today, and especially I would like to thank those who have gathered here in Moscow. I would like to thank you all those who support us, all over our big homeland. Thank you, everybody. All those who said yes to a great Russia. I asked you once, will we win? We will win, and we have won.
Before we get started, check out our sponsor, chcadells.com. Get all of your survival and outdoor gear exclusively at CH Cadells. Check out their survival foods, watches, M48 Ops gear, and the LifeStraw personal water filter. That's chcadells.com. Always be prepared. Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV Alternative Media Television. It's a very dangerous time in geopolitical history. As was noted in my last video, with Lord Rothschild of Rothschild Bank saying it's the most dangerous period of economic and geopolitical history since World War II. And it couldn't be more true coming from the mouth of this bankster scumbag. You see, the President of the United States, Barack Obama, wants regime change in Russia, and he will do anything and will stop at nothing to achieve it. It's exactly why, principally why, and I've done numerous videos on this, why oil prices have been artificially manipulated into the doldrums. It's absolute smoke and mirrors. Again, it was artificial when oil was above $100 a barrel, so the hedge funds trading on 15 times leverage could manipulate it so they could realize gains. They could put profits in their pockets, as the Wall Street gangbangers typically do. And now it's trading in that 50, 60 range respectively, whether or not you're looking at WTI or Brent crude, which is a measure of OPEC producing nations, due to the principal fact that the President of the United States, the West, and her allies are looking to push Vladimir Putin out. In fact, there was a conspiracy. There is an active conspiracy that the killing of the very high profile, although Russians know he was actually low profile, Nemtsov, if I'm saying his name correctly, the gentleman that was shot, an anti-Putin critic shot on a bridge with his model girlfriend. There's a conspiracy in Russia among the people and the international community and anyone with a thinking brain that it was a hit by the CIA. It was a hit by the West and the USA potentially put even more pressure on Putin. Again, the president of the United States wants Vladimir Putin out. And I want you to think about this in reverse for a moment. Imagine if Putin was putting the same pressure on Obama, if he was arming Occupy Wall Street, or perhaps the Tea Party with weapons of war to overthrow the White House and the U.S. federal government. How do you think he would act? How would he respond? What would he do? Would he imprison those that opposed him? Would he declare new wars? Would he engage the enemy? It's exactly what the President of the United States is attempting to do in Ukraine. The West overthrowing the rightful democratically elected leader, and now soon to be justifying providing them with lethal force, more ammunition, so to speak. In reality, literally to arm the Ukrainian government, the puppet known as the Poroshenko government that has been installed courtesy of the West in this buildup to war with Putin. It's exactly why 80% of all Russians have a negative outlook on America and Americans in general. Because they view Americans, a typical American, typical fat-ass McDonald's, eating super leveraged, lazy POS, who has somehow finds enough money through, I guess, the socialization programs created by Obama to buy their Apple Watches and their iPads and iPods, but still can't find any money to support gas prices. Again, we're expected to believe that the demand just isn't there, but somehow Apple is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar company, the first company allegedly with a market cap of over $1 trillion+. You know, Americans can't get enough Starbucks or Apple watches for $300 to $500, but can't support gas prices. Also, you notice the gas prices have actually gone up, even though oil is artificially low. They're still banging you, the consumer, even though oil prices, if you check the market, is at 50 to 60, depending on whether or not you're looking at West Texas Intermediate crude or you're looking at Brent crude, more of the OPEC measure. Again, all of this is financial gangbanging. It is financial manipulation, and it's what Obama intends. Notice other casualties like Venezuela, by the way, that's seeing 60% inflation. They saw that last year. They're expected to see it this year in 2015. A box of condoms is like over $50. Tampons are like $28. They're seeing this rampant inflation, just the latest victim of this Obama tyranny. It's exactly why Obama has been negotiating with Iran. Again, oil prices this is a triple-fold or a dual-fold strategy. It's brought Iran to the negotiating table, supposedly an enemy of the United States, also puts pressure on Putin. This is why Israel has been in uproar, why we've had King Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking and addressing Congress. Because everybody knows it, except for the dipshit, dumbed-down masses here in the United States of America, that we're at war. It's again why Russia has such a very dark, hideous, and pessimistic, negative viewpoint and outlook of the United States. At a time when Putin has overwhelming majority support in his country, not just from the oligarchs, but with 2/3 in his favor, according to recent presidential polls. Compare that to what we have here in the United States of America, a race-baiting president that focuses more on CNN headline stories like the latest Ferguson riots or dividing the country through racial tensions. Again, this is all building up to war. This is all financial gangbanging. It's total and utter manipulation. Again, the President of the United States here, Barack Obama, wants Putin out, wants to force Vladimir Putin out, his 15-year track record. Imagine how the West would respond if the situation was in reverse. Again, the United States of America, the aggressor. The United States of America, the country invading places like Iraq and Afghanistan under false pretenses, under the lie of weapons of mass destruction, artificially manufacturing the creation of Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the latest boogeyman to blast across your television sets to justify these wars. The U.S., the aggressor, not the other way around. Again, this latest crisis in Ukraine has been entirely engineered by the West, by the United States, and by her allies to attempt to overthrow Vladimir Putin. Putin's not going to let this happen. I don't think that the likelihood of him being ousted is very likely. I think what's more likely is a response, a military response. Not only we're engaged in economic warfare, but expect a military response from rising giants like Russia and China, and namely the BRICS. Expect them to attack, react, and protect their sovereignty militarily, just like the United States would. Remember and understand who's brought us here, how we've been led here. I used to have an old professor that said, Christopher, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And it's exactly the situation we have today, leading to war, leading to more global instability, unrest, and all of us paying the price. I'm Christopher Green. Get this video out everywhere, make it viral, hard-hitting it in your face, and click the link below to support our sponsor.
Okay, and, you know, I don't think that Putin would get ousted, but I understand how they're trying to play it, though. They're trying to put pressure points on it. It's a struggle over two groups that want to create a new world order in their vision. And no one else other than these elite groups are going to have any say in it. That's how they view the public. Whether it be here or in any other country, we will get played for their benefit. So when we look at what's going on, citizens in, whether it be Russia, America, we got to stop playing into this propaganda that continually keeps us at war with each other over power over the world, really. And also realize when you start getting in bed with Rothschilds or any of the world elite, they're going to benefit no matter if you win or lose. So what side are they really on? Because they're always playing both sides. They're always financing both sides. So you take their money and they'll finance our side no matter what then. So we got to at least get our cut. Well, then you're pretty much reassuring that the only people that are going to truly benefit are those people. When a nation has seen tragedy and has felt pain from being attacked, whether you think it's an inside job or outside job, whatever, people have always risen to combat against that. You don't need the finances of these people to get a nation to fight for freedom. But when you do take the finance, you're almost reassuring that they will not get freedom. I think that's one thing that's missed a lot. Give me a second here. Sorry, having a little issue here. Okay. Here we go. Yeah. Close it out and bring it back on. Okay. This is out of benswan.com. Exclusive audio. As POTUS, President of the United States, Senator Graham bows U.S. military against non-compliant Congress. And that's just the title of the article. Exclusive audio. As President of the United States, Senator Graham bows U.S. military force against non-compliant Congress. Among the crowded field of potential presidential candidates vying for the GOP's nomination, Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina is the latest to stump in New Hampshire. While visiting the Concord City Republican Committee on March 7th at the Politics and Pies Forum, the 59-year-old senator asserted that American ground troops would be necessary to defeat ISIS. In addition, he advocated the reversal of defense spending cuts, and as President of the United States, Graham would restrict the movement of lawmakers until those cuts are reversed. In a chilling statement, Graham said he would not allow Congress to leave D.C. until his demands are met, declaring he would use United States military force to keep him there. And here's the first thing I would do if I were President of the United States. I'm going to play this audio clip here.
I wouldn't let Congress lead until we fix this. I would literally use the military to keep them in if I had to. We're not leaving town until we restore these defense cuts. We're not leaving town until we restore the intel cuts.
Okay. So, you basically have just another status quo, government control. I'm the president. I can do what I want. Said here, New Hampshire GOP leaders were unable to speak on behalf of the candidate. Graham's South Carolina U.S. Senate primary opponent, State Senator Lee Bright, had this to say: if Graham is not being serious, he should choose his words with more thought. If he's being serious, those actions would be a threat to the Republic. Graham's office responded to clarification inquiry with, due to the large volume of mail I receive, I regret that I'm only able to respond personally to inquiries from South Carolinians. That's what you're going to get. Okay, let's move on. And here's one about Apple. Apple admits Siri voice data is being sent to third parties. This out of Infowars.com. Company following same process that caused Samsung privacy controversy. Following controversy last month about Samsung transmitting spoken words to a third party, Apple's terms of service clearly state that the company is following a similar process by recording transmitting the voice data of Siri users. In November last year, we were reported on how Samsung's global privacy policy advised users of their smart TV range that personal and other sensitive information in the form of spoken words was being captured and transmitted to a third party. The controversy only blew up 3 months later when Samsung was forced to admit that voice data was being sent to a server operated by a third party during the process. However, Apple's iOS software license agreement also advises users of the iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch that when you use Siri or dictation, the things you say will be recorded and sent to Apple in order to convert what you say into text and process your request. It says here, quote, by using Siri or dictation, you agree and consent to Apple's and its subsidiaries and agents' transmission, collection, maintenance, processing, and use of this information, including your voice input and user data, to provide and improve Siri dictation and dictation functionality in other Apple products and services, states the document. The terms make it clear that Apple is carrying out the very same process that got Samsung into hot water just weeks ago. The iOS terms clearly state that Apple will record what you say and may send it to subsidiaries and their agents. It goes on to add that they will record your names of your contact, your relationships with them, in-home devices, and sometimes your location, writes Tim Pool. Where is the data collected by Siri being sent to? Last month, a Reddit user called Fallon Miss claimed that he had started work for a company called Walk and Talk Technologies and that his job was to check for incorrect translations made by Siri. Audio heard by the individual included sexting via voice and people giving the usual banal and weird commands to their phones, reported Forbes. As Poole points out, the vast majority of people don't read terms of service agreements and are completely clueless. And I'm going to play this from Tim Poole.
Today, I want to talk about some privacy issues that have been circulating the web in a bunch of different stories. It's basically stemming from a Reddit user named Fallen Mist who claims to work for a company called Walk and Talk Technologies that allegedly is storing everything you say to your phone for voice-to-text services, kind of like Siri, and then listening to it later. Now, a lot of outlets are playing into the debate of privacy and whether or not this is good or bad, and they're sort of missing the point. A few outlets are actually doing journalism and questioning this user on whether or not what they're saying is true. See, when you do a Google search for Walk and Talk Technologies, you don't find anything. And this user is claiming that they're being paid in an MMORPG currency and not real money. Regardless of whether or not this story is true, we're all forgetting that about a week before this, we were all up in arms over the Samsung Smart TV privacy policy, which actually said they're sending what you say to third parties. And it actually said to be careful about having sensitive conversations because a third party is listening. And after all that, Samsung's defense was, we're not doing anything more than companies like Apple and Google aren't already doing. As if that's supposed to calm us down, knowing that everyone else is doing this too. So these articles about Walk and Talk Technologies and Samsung TV comes out, and we're all up in arms about what it means to have privacy, and do we even have any? But why is this surprising to any of us? I mean, we all read the terms and conditions before agreeing to use these products, right? No, we probably didn't. But if you're one of those really rare people who did, you would have seen that in the iOS terms of service, when you use Siri, they're not only taking what you say and sending it to their subsidiaries and their agents. They're also taking your name and nickname, the name and nicknames of the people in your contacts list, and also your relationship to them. And if you have location services turned on, they also are taking your location. So what does it matter if they're taking what you say sometimes to Siri if they know what you're doing, who you're hanging out with, and they know where you sleep. So more and more people are starting to use voice to text for sending messages and taking notes. And that means not only do we have to worry about our messages potentially being spied on, but now the words we're actually saying are being sent off to third parties and listened to. For me as a journalist, it's a serious issue because I'm scared that I might compromise the safety and security of my sources. These stories and debates about how our privacy is slowly slipping away from us are not going to go away. At the same time, we're probably not going to start reading the terms and conditions of every new service we start using. So it's probably just going to get worse. But it's a brave new world, and I, for one, welcome our new machine overlords. Just kidding, no I don't, but what can we do about it? Anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Vine at Timcast. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos like this, and see you later.
Okay. And you know, the whole privacy with electronics in the house is a really major one. You know, I have a laptop, a couple laptops really. Only one actually has a camera built in that is always covered. Of course, they can access the mic. I tend not to leave batteries in those devices. I don't keep a mic plugged into my machine here. I don't keep any of the cameras plugged in. It's one of those things you take steps. I don't keep my phone in my bedroom. I just don't think that's a safe thing to do. I was thinking, you know, how many people take their phone into the bathroom? No, a lot of people, you know, I need my phone to go to the restroom. Okay. Not probably the best thing to do. Most people don't think about when they do it. You know, you're not taking a phone, you're taking a camera. And you never know when someone might just access that. When we look at things like Samsung smart TVs, Apple products, we do agree to it. Not only do people agree to these terms because they're not willing to read them, they will line up outside a store waiting on the new one to come out, spending way too much money. Have you seen the prices of the Apple Watch? Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Now, you know, I've heard people talk about how revolutionary it is. It is. It's something with how Apple programs everything. They make it so clean looking and flawless. To a point, you always gonna have a bug here and there, and usually it's in the apps or something. It's not with the phone or the iPad. A lot of these other companies come out, our tablet can do this, and this, and I've used those operating systems, and I don't have the best of luck with them. When I use a Apple product, I tend not to have that many problems. And when I do, it's usually the app. And that's another thing, downloading apps. How many people read terms of service? Not many, but they'll download them. Definitely the free ones. And really, I wish I could go back to a block phone, um, even a house phone. And I hope you guys can hear me. Um, when I think about a phone, a smartphone, it really is a tracking device, a monitor. And if I could just go back to house phone, that'd be awesome. But being in the world we're in, being in what I do, I have to constantly stay up to date. And it's great technology. It really is. The problem is the market, the free market, the people that are buying these products. Everybody out there that agrees to these things are the problem. We don't, as a population, raise enough fuss when they go, here's a product that is awesome, but you'll have to give up your privacy. Nope, they sign on to it. They sign up for their iTunes account or their Google Play account, and they start downloading apps for free, saying okay to service terms without even reading them. And we go along with it. And now we basically have a bunch of companies that are monopolizing on the technology and the data sharing. And I think the market, the more that things like this get exposed, I think the more the market gets frustrated. And they force these companies to start changing policy. And I hope that's what happens. I hope people get frustrated enough with this to go, I hope Samsung suffers. There should be opt-ins, not opt-out options, too. If they go, well, we've all seen it with whether it be a program on a computer or other things. Would you like to opt in if you have an error report that automatically sends an error report to whoever? That way they can try to provide the best service, because we've all seen those. Well, I'm sure most of us. You can opt into that or opt out. It gives you that choice. But Apple with Siri evidently doesn't give you that opt out choice. Samsung doesn't seem to be giving a opt out choice. That's what needs to happen. When you say, no, I don't want my voice recorded, none of this, they should cease to collect any data from that device. But then another thing is a lot of these devices, well, they're Wi-Fi or they're Bluetooth or they're connected to the internet somehow. So they can be hacked. So then you face that. Definitely if you get a smart TV that, has cameras and all this built in, and isn't it great? And for anything to work right, it has to be connected to the internet. I think that's a really big issue. And I don't think a smart TV is truly necessary. Um, there's other ways to do things that work just great. I use one machine to even play a movie or whatever. It makes it easier. And here's something from Ben Swan that kind of, I was trying to find it. It plays into this whole thing. Not only do you have to worry about just some person sitting at home hacking it, this out of Ben Swan report exposes CIA's attempts to hack Apple devices. A report released on Tuesday by The Intercept asserted that researchers within the Central Intelligence Agency have been engaged in a multi-year sustained effort to sabotage the security of Apple's iPhones and iPads using a variety of methods, including creating dummy software targeted towards developers and attempting to crack Apple's encryption keys. The Intercept based its report on documents provided by NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. According to the Intercept, the researchers discussed ways to exploit security flaws of the devices at a secret annual meeting called the Trusted Computing Based Jamboree. It is claimed that the researchers created a modified version of Xcode, Apple's development software that is used to create apps. The modified version of Xcode would let the CIA, NSA, and other agencies access apps created by developers using the modified software. Quote, the researchers boasted that they had discovered a way to manipulate Xcode so that it could serve as a conduit for infecting and extracting private data from devices on which users had installed apps that were built with the poisoned Xcode. In other words, by manipulating Xcode, the spies could compromise the devices and private data of anyone with apps made by a poisoned developer, potentially millions of people. The Intercept reported that the researchers had also made efforts to utilize key logging software, which would record every stroke typed by user. What was that? Where was I? Every user affected by the software. The documents provided by Snowden do not specify that the CIA's efforts to break into Apple's devices has been successful. The CIA and NSA have not yet responded to the Intercept's report. Spies going to spy Stephen Bellovin, a former U.S. Federal Trade Commission chief technologist who is now a professor at Columbia University, told the Intercept, I'm never surprised by what intelligence agencies do to get information. They're going to go where the info is, and if it moves, they'll adjust their tactics. Their attitude is basically a moral, whatever works is okay. According to the Intercept, the government agencies have desired the continuous ability to bypass security tools built into wireless devices. Apple CEO Tim Cook made a pledge last year to protect the privacy of Apple users, especially from all government agencies. On Apple's website, Cook wrote that, "I want to be absolutely clear that we have never worked with any government agency from any country to create a backdoor in any of our products or services. We have also never allowed access to our servers, and we never will." Apple declined to respond to the report from The Intercept and instead referred to the company's previous privacy statements. So, I think that these phones, the ability to get information is definitely a critical thing, but we also have to be aware of what they can do and what they will do whenever they're given a chance. And if you keep your phone away from where you have private conversations, intimate moments, that's a safer approach. Many people want to sleep with their phone by their bed or in the room or take it into the bathroom. I think it becomes our responsibility, knowing what they can do with them, to take the steps not to give them those opportunities. Okay, give me a second here. Trying to find something. I don't know what issue find it here. Okay, I found it. This was from Reason. What out of control biohacking means for the future? And we've talked about transhumanism, and we recently had Google talking about immortality, and what these tech companies, some of the top people in these tech companies, and if you remember the gentleman that said that works at Google was kind of brought in, and I think that they're trying to find the fountain of youth through technology. But I wanted to play this here from Reason.
One of the reasons that various commenters and the authorities tend to be anxious about the future is that things are, in a sense, getting out of control.
Transcendence, the Disinformation Encyclopedia of Transhumanism and the Singularity, is a new book from writers Jay Cornell and Are You Serious, both former editors of Futurist magazine, H+, and longtime chroniclers of transhumanism, which is the belief that humans should hack their bodies and minds with technology to achieve better and longer lives. Covering topics ranging from artificial intelligence to cryonics to cyborgs to sex bots, The book is a compendium of nearly every subject or term important to futurists, transhumanists, and singularitarians. Reason TV sat down with Cornell and Sirius to talk about the history and the future of technological development, the politics of futurism, and how rapid decentralization is changing the way innovation happens.
If somebody came around today from 20, 30 years ago, they would see self-driving cars emerging. They would see some robotics replacing a number of forms of employment and labor. They would see everything having gone digital. I mean, the entire economy and the entire world having gone into what we used to call cyberspace. And that's just a huge transformation. I mean, that in itself is science fictional. And the next stage is likely to be bodily enhancements. Already we see people with cyborg enhancements that in some ways might be an improvement. We see 3D printing of organs. So I think we're right on that cusp where some of the science fiction-y elements of transhuman vision is coming to be, I think. NBIC is one of the concepts that some people feel is driving forward this future. So there's nanotechnology, which in theory is the control over the molecular structure of matter. There's biotechnology, which in theory is control over biology. There's information technology, which we all know and are familiar with, and possibly leading towards this concept of the singularity of developing intelligences that are greater than our own. And there's cognitive science, which sort of overlaps with information science, the enhancement of our intelligence, figuring out how to use our brains, perhaps how to unite our nervous systems and brains with the AIs.
To avoid the Skynet scenario, don't put your AI in charge of nuclear weapons launch without a little human circuit breaker in the middle there. But there are scenarios in which something relatively innocent could turn bad. Personally, I'm worried that somebody is going to get their little DNA machine and decide to cleanse the world of humans or whatever by producing some sort of super smallpox or super Ebola in their little garage laboratory. That sort of thing is going to be hard to protect against, because when the technology spreads and so many people can get a hold of it, chances are there's going to be somebody with bad intentions.
It could be that transparency is actually going to be the thing that will help us, and in the sense of having lots of eyes, almost all eyes on almost everything that's being done, what we call surveillance, everybody watching everybody else. As difficult as I find this personally, the possibility that everybody will just be intimately watching everybody else by the time we're producing these kinds of scenarios could be a saving grace.
Bridges in the pearl, symbolizing both pioneer vision and modern courage.
For most of human history, people didn't really even have a concept of technological progress. The technology of their great-grandparents was the same as theirs, and history might change because kings were born and died and empires would rise and fall, but the technology didn't really change. And it was really only in the last few hundred years that people started realizing that there could be these inventions that really mattered and that really changed the way that people did farming or whatever. By the 19th century, you had a great deal of optimism, all the sort of Jules Verne, early H.G. Wells stuff. And so in the 20th century, you had a great deal of technological progress, but a great sort of centralization of a lot of it, where at the beginning, the Wright brothers could build their airplane in their bicycle shop. And 50 years later, nobody was building a jet fighter in a bicycle shop. It was just not possible. And a lot of people felt that trend was inevitable. And yet with the whole maker revolution, 3D printers that people can buy, there's a great decentralization of this going on. And I think that's one of the reasons that various commenters and the authorities tend to be anxious about the future, is that things are, in a sense, getting out of control. They cannot control exactly who is saying what over the internet and who is communicating with what and who is building what in their garage.
There's a history of transhumanism and libertarianism. The Extropians were the original transhumanist group. They had a strong libertarian orientation, although there were people in the Extropian group who were liberals or leftists or Marxists. A lot of the people I interacted with were pretty centrist, actually, but they had a libertarianism of the body and the brain, because they all believe that human beings should be allowed to enhance themselves. They should be allowed to test things without the FDA interfering with it.
There are even now people who we talk about in the book called grinders, who are doing sort of scalpel level experiments on their own bodies, implanting magnets in their fingertips so that they can sense magnetic fields. And they're doing this with scalpels and vodka and ice cubes and without any permission.
I think self-experimentation is pretty much out of control right now, and I don't see a great tendency to want to control it on the part of the state. I mean, the interesting thing may be when some small group of hackers, biotech hackers or whatever, actually come up with, say, a longevity treatment or a formula that seems like it might be realistic.
Okay, again, that was from Reason. Now, you heard in that he talks about, well, you know, that's why we shouldn't have privacy and cameras on everything. That way we can make sure people aren't doing bad things. But who considers what's bad? Who's going to have control over the access of eyes on everything? It will always be government with eyes on everything and no one else. Then what are they considering what's bad? You know, what laws are in place at that point? And you saying that, you know, people experimenting themselves is out of control, you know. And basically, in a way, it sounds like you're calling for government to step in and regulate. Don't know if that's what he's calling for, but that's what it sounds like, what he would be calling for there, even though he talks about being libertarian. Talks about how the Wright brothers were able to make a plane in their bicycle shop. You can't do that now. Well, yeah, and you say at the same time though that self-experimentation is out. What the Wright brothers did was self-experimentation. We need that. That's how we boomed. Was even a lot of what's going on now is because of self-experimentation. That's a natural process to experiment, because a lot of times you go, well, I don't want to ask someone else to do this. Definitely if you're a entrepreneur, inventor, and you might want to test it yourself first. But, you know, we are reaching a technological age where things that are being experimented with do have the ability to completely change the world and society, either in a positive or a negative way. I think that we're reaching a point in society, period, really, it's a turning point. And it's not a turning point specifically towards any certain thing. It's a turning point in, you know, how we've seen technology in the past 15 years change. The type of technology and what's going to be possible is now completely changing. No more is it, what kind of better operating system are you going to get, or computer. Now it's what apps are going to be out there, what ability will this operating system give me for the possibility of having an app to do something. You can already get, they've already came out with like iPhone apps that with a device can measure brain waves or something like that. The possibility is completely changing. You no longer are looking at just, oh, it's the new operating system. Like, oh, the new Windows is out. It really, it doesn't, if someone can use Windows 7 and there can be something that's created, the computer's fast enough to deal with it, that is revolutionary. That's what they're really looking at. If someone could take a Windows 98 computer and someone creates some type of software that allows it to run fast and do what they want it to, and the technology on that end of it is revolutionary, they would do it. We're changing what we're looking for in the revolution of technology, and the whole transhumanism thing, I think, is becoming more and more reality. Not only when you look at things like prosthetics, but just the everyday thing for any person. First it was a cell phone, then it was the smartphone. People couldn't believe, the smartphone. We had some revolutionary things there. The cell phone, its first introduction, basically. Oh my gosh, there's a phone without a cord. And you don't have to be by some plugged into a landline. It was completely separate from landline. They stuck it in a car, oh my. Then when the phones got smaller and they realized, well, if we can make them this small and do this, couldn't we make them do more? And smartphone. A lot of people think, the flip phones and the smaller phones were the Razor. Razor couldn't do anything that the little bit bigger phones couldn't do. It wasn't that revolutionary other than they made it thinner. But when the smartphone came out, that was just mind-blowing to people. But now, what we're seeing in like the Apple Watch, well, there's other Bluetooth type watches that they got out there that they've had for a while. So what I'm seeing, the iPhone or the iWatch, whatever it is, it's the Motorola Razr of the revolution of technology. I think this is where we're going to start seeing the implant technology. We have the Google Glass, the watches. The next big thing for the revolutionary thing, it will end up being implantable devices. And I thought this was something that was definitely futuristic when I thought about it and heard about it years ago. We're not going to have no implant type thing as a phone. No, if it is, it's going to be some tracking chip that they secretly stick. No, no, I don't think that anymore. I think people, you're going to probably see something like a eye patch come out. And I'm not talking on your face eye patch. I'm talking some type of patch that they'll be able to put on your hand or your arm, and it'll pop up a hologram or something. You never know. I think technology is definitely, in a way, moving at a breakneck speed. But I think one thing that is happening is it's surpassing the majority of the populace, because it is getting more complex, and they're not making it user friendly at the level that they're at right now. They're making it user friendly at the iPhone or the iWatch level. But technology is a lot further than that already. And it's still talked about in technical terms. And, most people don't understand that. I want to take a second to tell you about the UCY store. UCY is partnered with Amazon.com. Amazon, one of the leading internet companies out there for sales when it comes to basically anything. But UCY has created their own little store through Amazon. That one thing it has done is given you one of the best collections of prepping gear or camping gear that you could basically ever want. All the way down to even radiation gear. So if you go to ucy.tv, click the UCY store tab. Just check it out. Take a look. And when you buy through the store, you're also helping us, UCY, get a little kickback so they can pay for operating costs. And it gives us hosts here on UCY a platform to bring you as much information as possible to keep you a free and independent human being. And prepping is definitely essential in that. So go check them out, ucy.tv, and click the UCY store tab. Another way I do it is I also diversify my wealth. I don't keep Federal Reserve notes because we understand what the Federal Reserve is and how it really thieves from us. Holding cash, the Federal Reserve note, you're going to guarantee that you're going to lose because inflation and the devaluation of the dollar continue to grow, and the mountain of national debt continues to grow. Whether it be bitcoins or seeds or anything, gold, silver, and seeds are some of what I believe to be the best investments when you're prepping. And when I want to buy some gold and silver, I go through Amagi Metals. They have great deals. They now have a tier program for their gold, so even the great prices they already had, they even have better prices when you're buying it in bulk. And silver, they always have great prices on their silver. They got Ron Paul, Murray Rothbard, bomb Mises. Great things. Even little copper ones you can buy. 1 ounce copper. Great gift items to give to people. But go check them out. If you go to antityrannynews.com/metal, you can get the same great deal, and at the same time, you're helping out broadcasts like this and antityrannynews.com. So check them out. I'm going to get into some more topics here. Maybe. Here was an update on the ATF ammunition ban. Update, benswan.com. Update, ATF calls ammunition ban publishing error. In February, we reported that the ATF was banning a popular ammunition M855, calling it armor piercing. That rule change, the ATF said in a statement, was due to a publishing error. Here is a statement. On February 13th, 2015, ATF released a public comment, a proposed framework including legal and technical analysis to guide its determination on what ammunition is primarily intended for sporting purposes. For purposes of granting exemptions to the Gun Control Act's prohibition on armor-piercing ammunition, this proposed framework is posted for public comment only. No final decisions have been made as to its adoption. Media reports have noted that the 2014 ATF regulation guide published online does not contain a listing of the exemptions for armor-piercing ammunition, and including that the absence of this listing indicates these exemptions have been rescinded. Please be advised that ATF has not rescinded any armor-piercing ammunition exemption. And the fact that there are not listed in the 2014 online edition of the regulations was an error, which has no legal impact on the validity of the exemptions. The existing exemptions for armor-piercing ammunition, which apply to 5.56, which is 222, SS-109, and M855 projectiles identified by a green coating on the projectile tip, and the U.S. 30-06 M2AP projectile identified by a black coating on the projectile tip remain in effect. The listing of armor-piercing ammunition exemptions can be found in the 2005 ATF regulation guide on page 166, which is posted here. The 2014 regulation guide will be corrected in PDF format to include the listing of armor-piercing ammunition exemptions and posted shortly. The iBook version of the regulation guide will be corrected in the near future. ATF apologizes for any confusion caused by this publishing error. According to the Blaze, despite this correction, several observers noted that the ATF is still considering a ban on this popular ammunition as outlined in their proposed framework. Apparently, the ATF is strongly considering a new stance that would get rid of decades-old exemption that allowed the sale of M855. They are currently taking public comments on this proposal. I think that they're doing this to try to get less pushback. Not, bringing up the fact that they're still considering it. Okay. Where are we on time? Okay. This one from Mark Dice. American Sniper exposed, American Liar. Bradley Cooper's war propaganda film debunked. And, we brought this up before. It's a good story. I feel bad for the wife. I don't wish harm against anybody, but I do think he was a hothead, and he was definitely had the mentality that war was good, and that he don't feel bad because he's just doing his job. I think he had it was in a way of his way of coping with it, which I think is a bad way in a way, because it just allows you to continue to do things that I think will eventually put you in a bad position. But the whole movie, I believe, was a complete propaganda film. And let's go ahead and play this here.
The fact is, when
American Sniper is the #1 film in the country, the record-breaking box office smash hit starring Bradley Cooper, which should actually be called American Liar. The film was based off of the #1 New York Times best-selling autobiography, American Sniper, written by Navy SEAL Chris Kyle, who bragged about having the most kills in the sniper division, pictured here on the O'Reilly Factor, wearing what looks to be a Totenkopf, a death's head skull, on his hat, almost identical to the Totenkopf death's head hat that the Nazi SS officers used to wear. The skull and crossbones, death's head, signified that they had the power in their hands over life and death, a seemingly similar megalomaniac delusion that Chris Kyle himself held. What's particularly interesting about this film, which, by the way, was produced with the help of the Department of Defense through the Entertainment Liaison Office. Here's the website on CIA's own website that talks about the Entertainment Liaison Office working hand in hand with Hollywood producers in order to create basically war propaganda infomercials designed as entertainment. Now, a couple interesting points about this film, which most brain-dead, mentally enslaved, war-loving Americans just can't get enough of. They think, such a hero, Mr. Kyle, such a brave individual shooting women and children with a sniper rifle. So a few people in Hollywood did speak out against the film, saying that it was a Nazi-style propaganda piece. Seth Rogen, who then had to apologize. He just got the call from the studio. Seth, you're not going to disrupt this American Sniper war propaganda. You're going to apologize. So he did. Oh, I'm really sorry. Let me just further explain my comments. Please, Hollywood, please continue to pay me tens of millions of dollars and keep me in my celebrity status. So anyway, what 99.9% of the moviegoers don't know is that Chris Kyle's book, in a court of law, it was determined that he fabricated various tales, particularly about allegedly punching out Jesse Ventura, causing Ventura to win a $1.8 million defamation lawsuit. Part of the money was from defamation, and part of it was from unjust enrichment, which means that the publisher in the book and Chris Kyle was making a bunch of money based off of the lies, which is why I'm going to sue some fellow YouTubers for unjust enrichment for defaming me, just to get the little clickbait AdSense and make some money. So some of you will have a surprise coming knocking on your door when you get served with the papers, but that's a whole other story. Jesse Ventura won the defamation lawsuit because Chris Kyle claimed in his book, and then they removed his name from the book for the final publish. But in interviews, he falsely claimed, he lied, that he punched Jesse Ventura out and said that Jesse Ventura was bad-mouthing the Navy SEALs, claiming that they deserved to lose a few because they were fighting in the unjust war. Now, it's reasonable to believe, and I myself believe, that this was part of a military intelligence smear campaign against Jesse Ventura, who was a very highly publicized figure, former governor of Minnesota. He had his television show for 3 seasons on True TV, Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura. You know, a very well-liked individual who could articulate certain issues in the mainstream media that nobody else would dare say. So it appears that Chris Kyle was part of a military intelligence COINTELPRO smear campaign against Ventura, and then Ventura didn't back down and sued him and then won. And then what's interesting, particularly tragic about this case, is Chris Kyle was then later killed by someone, not overseas, killed here in America by a former veteran, a fellow veteran, who was supposedly trying to help rehabilitate from his PTSD. So the idea is that Chris Kyle was going to possibly admit that he fabricated the tale, and in order to silence him, they had to just blow some devil's breath in somebody's face and then order them to assassinate Chris Kyle to keep him quiet. Now, Chris Kyle also made some very strange claims about, oh, and by the way, people are saying, oh, is Jesse Ventura suing the poor widow of, for defamation? No, it's actually the publisher and the estate and an insurance policy, and the widow made many, many millions of dollars off of the book and the movie. Now, of course, just record-breaking box office hit in the war-loving America. But where is the article? Here we go. The Washington Post. The unverifiable legacy of Chris Kyle, who proudly bragged that he was the deadliest sniper in America, killing 160 individuals overseas, some women and children. But he also claimed that he picked off dozens of looters during Hurricane Katrina. Right here from the Washington Post. Talking about the unverified stories. Like the one about how he and his bud went down to New Orleans following Hurricane Katrina and picked off dozens of bad guys. Oh, so I guess he just decided to assassinate looters? Which actually you can't do unless there's an imminent threat to somebody's life. You can't kill somebody to protect property. Okay? It continues here. Or the one in which he says that he took on 2 armed Texans bent on stealing his truck, and then shot them both dead. Oh, guess nobody found the police report about that, right? Or the one he told about former Governor Jesse Ventura. Yes, here the raw story has a story. 7 big lies American sniper is telling the American people about Iraq and Chris Kyle. Such a big hero, punching out a senior citizen like Jesse Ventura. Again, fabricating that story. So a few people in Hollywood dared to criticize this war propaganda. Again, literally produced with the help of the Department of Defense. See, Hollywood just doesn't produce a lot of these movies. They literally go to the government, and here's the CIA's own website. I mean, so few people know about this that right now, if you just Google CIA Entertainment Liaison Office, the first site that comes up is this page on CIA.gov. And then the second second article is my video on the CIA's entertainment liaison office. So nobody, before I started talking about this, I had never heard anybody anywhere discuss this other than in scholarly circles. And I'm a media analyst, bachelor's degree in communication, studying this for 15 years. So this film was literally produced with the help of the Department of Defense, who, gives them uniforms, gives them consultants just to make sure that the film's going to, portray the military in a positive light. And be an infomercial for the war on terror, which now, since the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attacks, has sort of resurfaced again, rebranded. Al-Qaeda has now been rebranded as ISIS, just like in George Orwell's 1984. Like, we were always at war with ISIS, So there you have it. The dumbed-down American public who love murder, they just love watching people get their heads blown off. That's how far down the toilet this country has sunk. How blackened people's souls and hearts have become. They literally just get off on films like this, and films like Hostel, and there's the Saw series. The American public like masturbating to the death and mass murder and torture of people on the movie screen, and so American Sniper serves that purpose for the public, and also continues to perpetuate the hoax that Chris Kyle was just a big American hero, again, just wearing a Nazi-style death head hat. I wield the power of life and death in my own hands. I am a god. Anyway, that's the news for now about this American liar. The American public have no idea that, oh, by the way, because he lost the defamation suit, the publisher has removed an entire chapter from his book, the fabricated hoax, COINTELPRO smear campaign against Jesse Ventura. So the reprints of the books, because sometimes they print 100,000 copies, and it's probably sold millions of copies, this moronic piece of trash. So in the reprints, and they may have even withdrawn and had to destroy the copies of the book with the lie in it. So now they had to pull that out of the book. But anyway, that's the news for now. Not allowed to criticize American hero Chris Kyle. You'll be forced to apologize publicly. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're new. Check out
Mark Dice on YouTube. And this kind of feeds into where we're going. We're kind of we're in a state that they're basically stirring up war, and really talking directly to troops. I would hope that our troops would stop going along with this. I urge young people not to join the military. And, when I was younger, I wanted to join the military. My grandfather is a World War II vet. I was one of those patriotic Americans. But time I got old enough to join the military, I was also pretty aware of what it was. I wasn't as educated on details and all that, but I did have a kind of understanding. I won't be fighting for freedom. I'll be fighting for the government and whatever they believe I should be doing. And I understood that enough that I couldn't go along with that. I couldn't do that. I felt, if I felt like I was actually going to be fighting for freedom, I probably would have done it. But I had understanding I'm not going to be fighting for freedom. Again, I'll be fighting for the government and whatever they want done. That's why I never joined. But it took me a while to really start educating myself even more on the depth of corruption, what government, what freedom is. Went through the constitutional phase. And part of that, even goes back in my family history with a great, 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 great grandfather that fought in the Revolutionary War. And just my history in my family always made me look deeper into things. And, I still think the American Revolution was a revolutionary act for its time. I think trying to create a government that would actually work for the people was a revolutionary act. But I think by now we also can really look at history and understand that it just don't work out that way. It just doesn't. And freedom has to be in the hands of every individual. And every individual has to have a understanding for freedom to continue to exist. You have to fight for the people that you disagree with. As long as no one's harming each other or their property. One thing I disagree with Mark Dice about you don't have a right to kill someone to protect property. Well, there's something about you have the right to stand up and defend your property, and when people try to use force against you, you have the right to defend yourself. I do believe that. I don't believe in baiting people. Can't leave a unattended running car on the side of the road and wait for someone to try to steal it and then shoot them. I don't believe in that. But and I don't believe in just shooting people, but I do believe in self-protection and protection of your property. Now, I would urge, again, people not to join the military, not to be a part of all this. I think that we need more people that are willing to be here to protect our homeland, our home. We have enough attacks on our own freedom that we really need to be here. We're around the world. What happens if we start more wars and they try to draw up people to go to war for America to fight for freedom? We'll lose freedom here. Less Americans that are willing to fight here, the better ability they could bring United Nations troops in. And I think that is a realistic possibility. Okay, I have one here from RT America. Give me a second here. Okay. Ben Swan at RT. Wisconsin man who changed investigating officer involved shootings condemns Madison killing. After Wisconsin police spent a mere 2 days investigating the police who shot and killed his son during a traffic stop, Michael Bell Sr. made it his mission to change how law enforcement in the state looked into officer-involved shootings. He worked with police and sheriff departments, lawmakers. I'm going to go ahead and cue this up here. It's pretty quick, so.
Madison is Michael Bell. Bell lost his own son during a police shooting in 2004. In November of 2004, Michael Bell Jr. was driving to his mother's home in Wisconsin. Police stopped him. They claimed he attempted to grab an officer's gun when the other officer standing by shot Michael Bell Jr. through the temple, killing him in front of his sister and mother. After a 2-day internal investigation, just 2 days, the police department cleared the officers of any wrongdoing. Bell's lawyer, however, found the officers' testimonies completely inconsistent with the medical examiner's report. No traces of Bell's DNA or fingerprints were found on the officer's gun. In March of 2010, Bell received a $1.75 million settlement in a civil suit claiming the officers used excessive force in his son's death. Now, it suggests, that report, that the holster of the officer's gun actually got caught on the car's rearview mirror, which broke, leading him to believe that Bell was trying to disarm him. I was joined earlier by Michael Bell to talk about his son's case. Bell says that when his son was killed, many people rushed to judgment, but he wanted to wait until the investigation was complete. I asked him how difficult it was to deal with the investigation being finished after just 2 days.
It was very difficult. I mean, I'm a military pilot. I was flying for my country. I believed in democracy, and I knew there was a problem with the system. And when I questioned it, I was ignored. I mean, and I was really bothered by it because I thought, if I'm being ignored, what's happening to other people and other races and other economic groups and so forth?
Tell me about some of the specifics here of what, obviously brought up alarm bells for you. The fact that witnesses had not been interviewed before this decision was made. Clearly, crime lab evidence had not yet come back. I mean, to be able to clear yourself in just 2 days' time, you essentially have to go into the investigation with the preconceived outcome. Do you not?
Absolutely. The officers involved were just taken and stuck into a room together, and they were allowed to sit there for 4 hours rehearsing their testimony or their statements. One of the officers said that they talked about the Packers game. I was upset because, give me a break here. You just shot a boy in the head in front of his mother and sister, and you're talking about a Packers game? That's how nonchalant this was. And so I was very bothered. I knew the way the investigations were supposed to work, and it didn't happen that way.
You won ultimately a $17.5 million settlement that was made. And instead of, sitting on that money, keeping it, you actually began a huge awareness campaign in regards to the broken system there in Wisconsin. And among that, you apparently went out and paid for 43 electronic billboards in Milwaukee that 12.5 million people drove past every week. Tell me about the billboard campaign.
Well, we did a lot of things to bring awareness, and every time we did something, we tried to see what worked. And in 2012, there was a young man who suffocated in the backseat of a squad car, and he begged for help. And I was so infuriated by it that I took out 17 billboards along the highways and interstates in the city of Milwaukee. And all of a sudden, the police union started backlashing and accusing me of wrongdoing. And so I went out and I purchased even more. And eventually we had 43 billboards, 41 of them being digital, 2 of them being vinyl. And the Traffic Audit Bureau data said that 12.5 million people drove by a week looking at messages like, name one police department that found itself unjustified. Good cops are the quiet majority. When police kill, should they judge themselves? And that's what we did, and that raised the expectations to the point where the mayor actually had to react to it, and the U.S. attorney actually had to react to it. Officers were charged. An inquest into this young man's death was formulated, and a patterns and practice review was being conducted by the U.S. Attorney.
And then ultimately from that, state law in Wisconsin has now been changed as well, correct?
Well, immediately after that, right here in the city of Madison, there was a young man. He was a musician. His name was Paul Heenan. He was unarmed, no criminal record. I accidentally walked into a wrong home. A bunch of friends had taken him out. He had just come back to the city. And as his neighbor said, "This is my neighbor, this is my neighbor," a police officer who has since retired shot him through the chest I think it was 3 times. And his sister reached out to me, and I came into Madison, and I worked with that group. And we bought billboards up here, we bought TV ads, and we bought print ads. And this man was killed on the same day, at the same time, just 8 years apart from my own son's death. And we took out ads that said things like, same day, same time, same conclusion. One of the things that I did was our family hired a researcher, and we looked at all the police fatal shootings in the state of Wisconsin since 1885, and we could not find one unjustified ruling by a police and fire commission, by an inquest, or a police department, and only 3 times did a DA ever charge an officer, and twice the officers had been cleared by their own department and an inquest. So we knew that this was an impossible record of perfection. And then we started seeing similar trends in Las Vegas and New Hampshire and so forth, where they were calling out the same thing. So I knew that the system needed to be changed, and that's when we started fighting for the bill.
And that was activist Michael Bell Sr.
And that was RT America, Ben Swan. You can find RT America on YouTube. And, you know, it's something that we have out of control police and government here in America. But you got these young kids that are being convinced that to fight for freedom you have to go overseas. And hopefully the youth is getting smarter and are not buying into it. And there was one homeschooling thing I wanted to talk about, and this from benswan.com. More African Americans are abandoning state-run schools and opting for homeschool, which I think this is a great thing. Everybody should be doing it, not any certain race but you know, this is something I think African Americans have realized, that the only way really that a lot of these communities are going to give their kids good schooling is to homeschool, because we know the public school system's broke definitely in more higher poverty areas, whether it be white, black, Hispanic. They don't take care of those schools quite as well. According to National Home Education Research Institute, approximately 220,000 African American students are being homeschooled. Black families are one of the fastest growing homeschool demographics. A 2012 report published in the journal of Black Studies found that most black families choose to educate their children at home to avoid school-related racism. Now, I don't think that's what it needs to be about, but homeschooling is still better. According to The Atlantic, there is the rise in homeschooling for African American families. We have all heard that American education system is not the best and is falling behind in terms of international standards. Temple University faculty member Ama Mazama said, but this is compounded for black children who are treated as though they are not as intelligent or cannot perform as well, and therefore the standards for them should be lower. and I don't think it's that. One city here in Indiana I know really bad public schools, I believe, and went through myself. The thing is it's not about the black community. The city has a pretty big Hispanic, white, and black impoverished community, and all the schools within any of the impoverished areas don't get that good of funding. Therefore, they kind of lack on a lot of things. I think that's where it hits hard. But in some places, I'm sure there is racism, and that doesn't surprise me. You're going to see it. It says here, listen to Ben Swan's interview with Dr. Paul about the homeschooling revolution and why more and more families are leaving the failed public school system and choosing homeschooling for their children. And I don't think I have enough time for that. I guess I do. It's not even 5 minutes. So let's go ahead and cue this up.
Hi, Dr. Paul. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine, thanks.
Let's talk a little bit about, you're coming out here for the Midwest Homeschool Convention in Cincinnati. It's April 6th. Tell me a little bit about, you have a passion and that you've spoken about for a number of years about homeschooling. Tell me about that.
Yes. Although I am a product of the public school system, and I went 12 years, and my kids have gone through it. We have public school teachers in our family. I always knew there was something very special about homeschoolers. And as public schooling has gone downhill, I have recognized that those individuals who have been exposed to homeschooling are so delightful and so well informed, and they're doing so well, and they have achieved much more than anybody predicted when it became more popular. I was very much aware of homeschooling back in the early 1980s when some of these court cases were going through and the government tried to close all the homeschooling down. So I see it as a wonderful opportunity in this age with the internet and options for people to get educated at their home with their parents and by their parents or whatever they choose, and get a much better education at the same time not getting the government propaganda, which is more or less what's happening in the public school system right now.
For you, is that one of the larger issues here, besides the education issue, which obviously, you can put homeschool students up against public school students or private school students, and they do extremely well academically, certainly in spelling bees and just their overall grades. But beyond that, the issue of teaching history that is not revisionist history, and the way that homeschoolers are able to really focus on their kids and make sure that they're not receiving that propaganda. For you, is that a major issue?
I think I start really with the fundamental right of people to get their education where they want, and the fundamental responsibility of parents being responsible, for their children's education rather than the state. But like you suggest, that is an absolutely important reason where they can actually get, real history. And we don't have to dictate, somebody's, studying at home and having homeschooling, they can pick and choose. But once you go into the government school system, it's a monopoly control, and it's slanted. So no, I think it's a wonderful time to get a different viewpoint on history. And if parents don't particularly like the approach of one group versus the other, there could be a religious connotation. There could be absence of religion. And so I think it's a wonderful example of how freedom actually operates and brings people together. It's not like only conservative Christians want homeschooling. Others want it too, and this sort of fits into my argument that freedom brings us together. It's the principle of freedom that is so important. So that is what I really start with, freedom of choice and our own responsibility to take care of ourselves.
Somebody had mentioned to me that you may have a book coming out about homeschooling. Is that correct?
Yes, I do have a book. It's been mentioned in the media. I didn't purposely release it, but the information is out there. But it's no real big secret. It's not on the verge of next week or so coming out. But it is a book because I believe it's a very important subject, and I hope I can contribute something to the whole issue.
Yeah, the homeschooling movement, as it has grown, as you mentioned, it is not primarily just a Christian issue. And obviously there's a lot of born-again Christians, evangelical Christians who are a part of that homeschool movement, but it's not exclusive to Christians. And so as you've seen this grow, as you've written the book, what was the inspiration behind the book, and what do you hope to inspire people with through this book?
Well, the motivation was to spread a message, which has more or less been my goal in my political life. Holding office was important because it made it easier to spread a message, but spreading a message was essentially my goal even in the 70s. In the 70s, I'd have to admit, homeschooling wasn't on the agenda. That became more of my interest later on. So I want to talk about it and go to these conferences when invited, write books about it, because I see it as the alternative. I really am encouraged and optimistic about the future because so many people are joining the homeschool movement, and that is reason for us to be optimistic about what's happening. If this weren't occurring, I would think that our country would be in a lot worse shape.
Great. Dr. Paul, anything else that you would like to add in advance of your trip to Cincinnati?
No, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a nice crowd there, and I think I'll be there with a lot of friends, and I hope I can inspire people to keep working very hard in the homeschool movement.
And, I hope more people start homeschooling. I think it's extremely important. Definitely the direction that we're headed. The children are being dumbed down. Luckily for some people, they've worked with their children, and they're kind of countering on the public school system, but you can't counter it that long because of the way they're teaching, Common Core being one of them. They are purposely trying to divide you, I believe, in that area. It kind of goes back to the breakdown of the family. They understand the ability for a close family to be a strong family, and they don't like that because, a lot of these people, they know it because it's their weakness too. They've created dynasties, and they don't want anybody else to be involved in that. A lot of people, I know, like, a lot of people for the longest time thought Bill Gates was just some, kid that came up with Windows. A lot of them had no clue, even some till recently, that his dad helped and was one of the founders of Planned Parenthood. They didn't know that his dad was a part of eugenics. And when you start connecting dots and things start becoming a little bit too coincidental to ignore, I think that's when people become aware of what's going on in the world. Because you start seeing things that you didn't see before. And it's that whole Matrix experience. You have to be willing to stop and really pay attention to what's going on. For so many, they're stuck in this box. You go to work, spend a little time with your family. Make sure you watch your football games or your basketball games or go mow the lawn, have your one little hobby, either your car or, again, playing maybe a sport, golf, whatever, fishing. Just in this repetitive thing that only barely keeps them at the level that they're at. Occasionally, some people break through to the next level. But then the powerful people have a powerful tool. I call it a reset button. And when too many people are just getting way too wealthy, they're getting houses. I think that they have this reset button that they reset the economy by crashing our economy. Always seems to be that way. I look at the Great Depression, the dust storm is what contributed. But before the dust storm, there's all kinds of opportunity. Bam! Dust storm, depression. Of course, the government didn't go, yeah, let's create an artificial dust. No, it was, but their policy helped produce a dust storm. There's subsidies for growing wheat and growing more wheat and more wheat till they drain the soil and dust storms get through. I just don't think government will ever be a viable option to fix what they create. And I think I might have time for one quick one here. Got about 2 minutes. Darn. I'm not going to be able to cover this long one. But a slap in the face. Sheriff ordered to remove American flag from courthouse. This is at Infowars.com. A sheriff in Virginia is angered after being ordered to remove an American flag displayed from his local courthouse in a move he is labeling a slap in the face. Portsmouth Fire Department recently gifted Sheriff Bill Watson's office with a flag display crafted out of recycled fire hoses, complete with a sign that reads, "A tribute to public safety." When Sheriff Watson attempted to have the display mounted in the lobby of the Portsmouth courthouse, however, judges blocked the effort, claiming it would set the wrong precedent. Sheriff Watson says the judges told him, not only do we want it on, do not want it on the wall, we don't want it in the courthouse. I just can't believe that they don't want display American flag in the courthouse. I mean, that's the most asinine thing I've ever heard in my life. Sheriff Watson laminated to CBS affiliate News Channel 3. One of the judges who preferred to remain anonymous explained their position to reporters, saying the lobby was an inappropriate location for the display and was unnecessary. Additionally, the judges said they feared a slippery slope. That's all. Hi.